Okay, it's officially 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. And we will start with the open public meeting statement. On Thursday, December 3rd, 2020, notice of this meeting was mailed to the press and the Current of Egg Harbor Township. Notice was also delivered that day to the Egg Harbor Township clerk and posted on the bulletin board in Township Hall. Advertised instructions for this virtual meeting were posted on our website and on social media on Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020. At this time, we would like to please stand and salute the flag when it comes up on the screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'll report the election results. For a 3-year term, Patrick Ireland with 11,280 votes, Mr. Michael Price with 10,379 votes, and Mrs. Gilbert Floyd with 9,516 votes. At this time, I'll ask Mr. Price, Mr. Ireland, and Mrs. Gilbert Floyd to unmute as I go ahead and do the oath for school board members with you. And I would ask you to repeat after me. Are we ready? All of are unmuted. Thank you. I state your name.
I, Patrick Ireland,
Michael Price,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and
and I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established by the United States
and
and to the governments established in the United States
and this state
and this state
under the authority of the people.
under the
authority of the people.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I state your name.
I, Patrick Ireland,
Tamika Gilbert Floyd,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I possess the qualifications
that I possess the qualifications
prescribed by law
prescribed by law
for the office of member of a Board of Education,
for the office of a member of a Board of Education,
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
and
and that I am not disqualified as a voter
pursuant to RS 19
RS 19
4-1,
4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction
nor disqualified due to conviction
of a crime or offense
of a
or a
crime
crime or offense
listed in
listed in
NJS 18A
NJS
NJS 18A
colon 12-1,
colon 12-1,
and that I will faithfully,
and
and I will faithfully,
impartially, and justly
impartially, and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of that office
of that office
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You are officially sworn and subscribed to before me on this 5th day of January 2020, and we will sign as soon as we can and get that over to the central office. Congratulations. Welcome.
Thank you.
At this time, I will do a roll call of board members. Mrs. Alabarda,
Here.
Mrs. Bird,
Present.
Mr. Castellano,
Here.
Mr. Della Barca,
Here.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd,
Here.
Mr. Ireland,
Present.
Mr. Price,
Mr. Price is here.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Here.
And Mrs. Salagi.
Here.
Thank you. So at this time, I will entertain motions to approve the appointment of the board president. If you would like to make a motion, you would state your name. You make a motion for whom you recommend for president. Once I have all of the nominations in, we will then do a roll call vote, and you will state the name of your vote versus a yes or a no. Okay? So I have any motions for recommendation for board president?
This
I
is
see
Mr.
Mrs.
Price.
Salagi.
I have a recommendation. For
Mr.
Pete
Price, go ahead.
Castellano, I would like to nominate Pete Castellano as president.
Thank you. Any other nominations? I saw Mrs. Salagi's hand up.
Yes, I'd like to nominate Marita Sullivan.
Any other nominations for president? At this time, I don't see any, so I will do a roll call vote, and you would please state either Mr. Castellano or Mrs. Sullivan. And I will start with my alphabetical roll call votes. As soon as I get that, here it is. Okay. Mrs. Alabarda.
Mr. Castellano.
Thank you. Mrs. Byrd.
Mr. Castellano.
Mr. Castellano.
Mr. Castellano.
Mr. Della Barca.
Ms. Sullivan.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd.
Mr. Castellano.
Mr. Ireland.
Mr. Castellano.
Mr. Price.
Mr. Castellano.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Mrs. Sullivan.
And Mrs. Salagi.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Okay, we have enough votes for Mr. Castellano to be president for the 2021 calendar year. Congratulations, Mr. Castellano. At this time, I will continue running the meeting through vice president, and then I will turn the meeting over. At this time, the same process, we will take nominations for vice president. Please state your name and who you're recommending for vice president, and then we will do a roll call vote for names. I see Mrs. Bird's hand up first. Go ahead.
Mrs. Byrd, I would like to nominate Mrs. Gilbert Floyd for vice president.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Mrs. Salagi?
Yes, Marita Sullivan.
Thank you. And Mr. Ireland, I saw your hand. Yep.
I would like to nominate Mr. Lou Del Barca.
Thank you. Any other nominations? So at this time, I will do a roll call vote. You will either vote for Mrs. Gilbert Floyd, Mrs. Sullivan, or Mr. Della Barca. Mrs. Alabarda?
Miss Gilbert Floyd.
Thank you. Mrs. Byrd?
Miss Gilbert Floyd.
Mr. Castellano?
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd.
Thank you. Mr. Della Barca?
Lou Della Barca.
Thank you. Mrs. Gilbert Floyd?
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd.
Thank you. Mr. Ireland?
Mr. Lou Del Barca.
Mr. Price?
Miss Gilbert Floyd.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan?
Mrs. Sullivan.
And Mrs. Salagi?
Mrs. Sullivan.
Okay, we do have more than, we do have 5 votes for Mrs. Gilbert Floyd. Congratulations, Vice President 2021. At this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to Mr. Castellano, Board President.
Thank you, Chandra. Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for placing your confidence in me to continue on as president. And all I can promise is to continue to work hard and give it 100%. I'm going to see if Mrs. Gilbert Floyd would like to say a word, and then I'll ask our newly elected or re-elected board members if they would each like to say a word before we get into the business of reorganization.
I just wanted to say thank you, and that it is an honor to serve in any capacity on the Board of Education and for our district, and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, so our new members, new and re-elected. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. I just raised my hand too, so you should have saw that. Finally, so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. Ms. Anaya just read out the votes. I had 11,280 votes. That was the most in school board history, along with Michael Price and Tamika Floyd. So thank you very much. We are part of history, getting the most votes in EHT school board history. So I wanted to say thank you to them. Thank you to also the other people that ran, Nicholas Seppi, Michael Marlino, and Stephen Napoli for an all-volunteered position. I just wanted to say thank you also to my dear wife and family for supporting me through everything and picking up our kids during a lot of different practices and just hanging in there for me for the last 2 years when I ran. I just appreciate that. Thank you. I look forward to working with every other board member that I see out here, my fellow board members. I appreciate that. I look forward with working with our administration that we go into the year of 2021. But that's it. Let's get to work.
Very good. Okay. Who'd like to go next?
Mr. Price?
Mr. Price.
Okay. I would just like to thank everybody for their support. I'm proud to be here and serving for the next 3 years, and I'm looking forward to working together with everyone for the betterment of the school district. And congratulations to you, Pete, again as president, and our new vice president, Tamika Gilbert Floyd. And welcome, Patrick. And let's get to work. Thank you.
Okay. Anything additional, Mrs. Gilbert Floyd?
No, I just want to say that just echo what Patrick and Mike said. Ready to work together and roll our sleeves up and get something done, and continue to keep Egg Harbor Township on the map. That's it.
Very good. Congratulations to all of you. Welcome. Welcome back to those returning. Welcome to our new members. And yep, we have a lot of work to do. So we're going to get into some of our reorganization business. And the first is in our bylaws and our calendar. And so with that, I'm going to ask for a motion on 9.1 and 9.2, please.
Motion made.
I'll second.
Second.
Mrs. Byrd.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on 9.1 and 9.2? Go ahead, Patrick.
So reading through all the policies, policy 1649, the Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, it says the policy says the provisions of the FFCRA shall apply from April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. It's after that. So are we amending this policy? I'm not sure if that's already been discussed, I've not been privy to any other information other than right now. So I just wanted to bring that up during this discussion.
Go ahead, Mrs. Houck.
Yes. Obviously, as many of you know, the federal government just passed additional legislation. We will certainly look at that as a board and as a district as part of the policy committee meeting to see if there's any changes that need to be made.
Yep. So as soon as we, get our get to policy, we may very well need to update that. And why do I still? It's Mrs. Elko. Why do I still call you Mrs. Houck? Old habit.
I answer to pretty much anything, so you can call me whatever you want.
Old habits. Okay. Any further discussion? But very good point. So seeing none, roll call on that.
Okay. Miss Alabarda,
Yes.
Mrs. Byrd,
Yes.
Mr. Delabarca,
Yes.
Mr. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Mr. Price, yes.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mrs. Salagi,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Castellano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move into appointments. And so I'm going to ask for a motion on 10.1 through 10.7, please.
So made.
Second, Mrs. Sullivan.
Is there any discussion on the appointments? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Ms. Alabarda,
Yes.
Mrs. Byrd,
Yes.
Mr. Delabarca,
Yes.
Mr. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Mr. Price, yes.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mrs. Salagi,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Castellano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now our official newspapers and depository of funds. I'll ask for a motion on 11.1 and 11.2, please.
So made.
Second, Maria Sullivan.
Is there any discussion on those items? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Alabarda,
Yes.
Mrs. Byrd,
Yes.
Mr. Della Barca,
Yes.
Mr. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Mr. Price, yes.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mrs. Salagi,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd,
Yes.
and Mr. Castellano.
Yes. Okay, thank you. We're going to move into a finance item. We normally don't have a finance item, but at reorganization, but this evening it's necessary for us to approve the acceptance of the preschool grant. And as we all know, this is quite significant, as we'll be receiving close to $3 million from the state of New Jersey to begin our pre-K program. So I'm going to ask for a motion on 12.1, please.
Mr. Price, I make that motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Alabarda,
Yes.
Mrs. Byrd,
Yes.
Mr. Della Barca,
Yes.
Mr. Ireland,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
Mr. Price, yes.
Mrs. Sullivan,
Yes.
Mrs. Salagi,
Yes.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Castellano.
Yes. Okay, thank you all very much. A couple of items in number 13. So first I'm going to go to bylaw 0142 on Code of Ethics, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Elko to just walk us through that.
Absolutely, Mr. Castellano. Every year, we're required to review the Code of Ethics as board members. The Code of Ethics will be sent to you, Chandra, for them to sign via email or mailed in the mail.
It's attached in board docs for their convenience, but I can email it as well this evening.
Okay, perfect. Just at some point, sign it. If you don't have the ability to print out a copy, let us know and we can have a copy printed and sent to you. I'm going to go over the Code of Ethics, but before I do that, I also want to remind you of a few other things. Each year as a board member, you have to fill out your financial disclosure forms. In addition, you're required to do mandatory training. If you have a question about what training level you're at, please reach out to Mrs. Anaya and she'll be able to help you determine which training courses you need. The Code of Ethics are really about what your responsibilities are as a Board of Education member. The first one is to uphold all laws, state board rules and regulations, court orders, and you should only make change according to law. The second one is to make decisions in terms of the educational welfare of children and seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing. The next one is to confine your board action to policy making. And as you know, one of the biggest functions of a Board of Education is to create policy. And that policy guides your administrators to determine what you as a board want done. So you're confining your action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and you help frame policies and plan only after the board has consulted those who are affected by them. The next one is to carry out your responsibility not to administer the schools, but to make sure with your fellow board members that the schools are well run. And you do that by hiring a superintendent, evaluating that superintendent, and making sure that the district is going in the direction that you as a board want it to go. The next one is to recognize that the authority rests with the Board of Education and that you as an individual cannot make any personal promises nor take any private action which could compromise the board. The next one is to refuse to surrender your independent judgment to either special interest groups or political groups, or to the use for personal gain or gains of friends. The next one is to make sure you hold all matters confidential. And this is very important. As a board, we go into executive session every meeting, and we talk about all different types of matters that we're allowed to, subject to the rules of executive session. And those items must be held confidential. That means not sharing them with family members, friends, significant others. It's keeping it confidential and making sure that they stay in the confines of whether it's the virtual electronic meeting room or the in-person executive meeting room. You have to make sure that you're going to vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the superintendent, that you will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties, that you're going to refer any complaints you receive to the superintendent, and that you as a board will only act on those complaints at a public meeting if the administration failed to act on those complaints. So that is the code of ethics. You do have it in your packet. At any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I will do my best to give you an answer with your specific question. Thank you very much, and congratulations to the board members.
Thank you, Mrs. Elko. Appreciate that very much. The remainder in number 13. So basically, in terms of committees, I'm going to, again, as I did last year, ask everyone to please email me your preferences by close of business Friday. Now, we have the flexibility in our bylaws to put up to 4 members on a committee. We had some board members that liked that and wanted to give it a try. We had other board members not like that so much. So this year I'm going to just plan on putting 3 on a committee. Maybe that made life a little simpler for people. So, we'll appoint 3 each to the 3 standing committees, and those are finance and operations, curriculum and instruction, and policy. So again, if everyone could email me a first choice and second choice, we'll take a look. I'll consult with Mrs. Gilbert Floyd, and I always try my best to give everyone their choice of committees. That's always my goal. So that's kind of where we are then on the committees, and when we have those together, we'll go ahead and roll them out. I'll have Chandra put them out in an email, and I think at this point I'll check in with Steve. I'll get, and I see Rita's hands up, which I'll get to in one second. I think we're planning to at least have an introductory committee meeting of all 3 committees next Tuesday. Even if we don't have a lot or much business, but just at least to get them together, correct?
Yes, Mr. Castellano, that's correct.
Okay. Mrs. Sullivan.
Since we're going with 3 people on the committees as members, will we have the option to attend any meeting we want to as an extra, as the 4th person, like we used to before, as long as we notify you?
Yes. Well, and I think what we'll return to as practice is that myself as president or Mrs. Gilbert Floyd would have, that option, to attend. We may or may not attend them all, but I'm certainly open if someone wants to sit in, at a given meeting, and, that's fine. And then, of course, if we have the occasion where someone has to miss a committee meeting for whatever reason and wants someone to sub or sit in for them, that's fine too. Want to make these, committees as user friendly, as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's where we are then on the, I see Mrs. Bird. You have to
Sorry.
raise your electronic hand too, Mrs. Bird. I'm
Okay.
putting a new,
All right, I'll try. Thank you. I just have a question about committees too. Is there any way we can plan our times of the committees no earlier than 5? Because it's difficult to attend certain committees if they're much earlier, if for people who work outside the home during the daytime.
yes, I appreciate you mentioning that. I was going to get to that when we rolled out, but I'm glad that you mentioned it now because, you know, that really is true. And, you know, even for me, working right until 5, making a 5 o'clock meeting is, you know, assuming now we're back at, you know, Swift school, it's pretty next to impossible. But really 5 should be, you know, the no, you know, we shouldn't be starting earlier than 5 because it really excludes folks that are doing things in the daytime. There was a time when we did not start any committees before 6, but since we went to the 3 committees in one night, we did push up to 5 because that allows the 3 committees to meet in the course of one night and not start at, you know, a crazy time of night, not start at 8 o'clock at night. So all that to say, yes. Okay, everybody good on the committees? And so I know Dr. Gruccio is delayed this evening, and so we do we normally at a reorganization wouldn't really do a formal superintendent's report, but you know, this is not a normal reorganization. These are not normal times. So I think Steve, you're gonna pinch hit with just a few updates on our COVID situation, and so I'll just sort of, you know, kick that off. And you know, before we go to public comment, you know, again, wish everyone a happy new year, and you know, welcome back. And we're looking forward to 2021. I sincerely believe that this is the year 2021. We are going to beat this virus. We are going to get back to normal. However, we have to realize that right now we're going to face a rough patch. We hope it's not too long, but really right now in these next immediate couple of months, the state remains at code orange. We're heading into a nationwide holiday spike, which comes on the heels of a fall Thanksgiving spike. We know that the numbers nationally, locally, and in the district are higher than ever. Those numbers for the district are visible for anyone right on our website. Our dashboard is there. So we do have to be very careful in these immediate next few months. We all see the light at the end of the tunnel. We all want life to be back to normal, and all of us want school to be back in person, full time, as soon as possible. But at the same time, as we've been saying since the beginning of this, the health, the safety, and the welfare of our students, our teachers, our staff, and their families and loved ones at home has to be priority one. So with that said, repeated, as I always do, I feel like a broken record sometimes. So with that said, I'll ask Mr. Santilli for any updates from administration on our road back plan.
Thank you, Mr. Castellano. First, on behalf of Dr. Gruccio and Central Administrative Team, happy and healthy New Year to everyone. I think we're all looking forward to a positive 2021. In addition to that, we wanted to also take the time to congratulate our newest board member, Patrick Ireland, and our 2 returning board members, Michael Price and Tamika Gilbert-Floyd. Congratulations to all of you, and welcome on board, Patrick. As Mr. Castellano had stated, Dr. Gruccio unfortunately had a family emergency, so the update in which I'm going to provide, I spoke with her earlier today, and will be sharing this update on behalf of her. So please bear with me as I go through this information and take you through, a timeline in regards to, the start of our closure and where we are today and where we plan to be. So just like newspapers and media do at this time of the year, first we want to take a look back and look back at the past year. So that way we are ready for the year ahead of us. 2020, as you know, was like a year like no other, and our district was #EHT strong and accomplished amazing things. We passed a balanced budget and was focused on student achievement, adhered to our strategic plan, included full-day kindergarten despite some resistance, and provided students and teachers with reading and math resources. Out of concern of safety, we installed a new track and field for our students. We honored the class of 2020 with a beautiful graduation ceremony after many weeks of changing guidance. We also recognized students, teachers, and staff along the way, and our students were able to experience a fall sports and band season to show off their talents and fulfill their passions. And just recently, we received the NJDOE preschool expansion grant to implement a preschool experience for all families in EHT. We now have a solid foundation in place for our EHT residents. And of course, this initiative will contribute to improved student achievement over many years to come. We did all this despite the trials and tribulations of COVID-19 and the pandemic that we faced, not just as a nation, but internationally. The mandatory spring closure that was followed was by uncertainty and ever-changing guidance. In July 2020, the NJDOE, as you recall, released a comprehensive, over 100 pages of the Road Back to School Restart and Recovery Plan for all school districts in the state of New Jersey. During that time, after going through that document, comprehensive document, we immediately looked to include parents and community members because we value our stakeholder opinions, and we formed 11 subcommittees, as you recall, and over 800 stakeholders joined together to participate and share ideas and also concerns. Some of those subcommittees included topics of attendance, athletics, transportation, health and safety, food services, and virtual learning, to name a few. Furthermore, then on July 28th, we brought together the research and stakeholders to one district RBS committee, where each community committee presented their ideas. I think we all would recall that was at least a 5-hour discussion in that forum. And although it was long, it was certainly needed. And that meeting was very productive as it generated the framework for teaching and learning, as well as excellent questions and concerns in which we were able to build our plan for EHT. One of the things that jumps out from that plan, it was a plan that adhered to the Road Back to School plan and executive orders that would also provide 180 days of continuous education. However, this plan also provided parents a choice: all remote learning or in-person learning. And the plan also was in compliance with law, where each student received 4 hours of instructional contact per day. From there, we created parent surveys, seeking information from parents for scheduling of in-person and remote students. The data showed most students look to return to in-person instruction. However, on a side note, once in session, our attendance numbers showed that less students were coming into the buildings and more students were learning remotely by choice. Additionally, as you recall, like many districts, we did not open for in-person instruction on September 4th. And then throughout the month of September, as areas of the building were being prepared and PPE was arriving, we were able to phase in programs. On October 26th, we opened for in-person instruction and followed a hybrid schedule that consisted of groups A, B, and C. All students had access to all of their teachers every day. It's important to note that not every school district was able to follow that design, but that was something that we felt strongly about based off of feedback from a variety of stakeholders. In shortly over a month of in-person instruction, we were burdened with COVID-19 cases, staff leaves, and a rise in county cases. This affected us to the point where we did not have the staff to operate effectively. Our students were not getting the opportunity to meet with their teachers every day, but rather a substitute who was at times an administrator, fellow teacher, and at other times a canceled class. This scenario did not contribute to a safe environment nor good learning. When the county turned orange, we decided as a district to close schools, as so many county schools around us have also done. EHT is not a small district where we can easily remain open with over 7,000 students and approximately 1,200 staff members to manage. Many other large school districts in the surrounding area have also closed, as they had the same situations and were not able to function effectively or safely. At this time, on January 19th, we plan to open our schools. We closed for a variety of reasons previously expressed. In addition, these 2 extra weeks make sure that people who traveled or gathered over the holiday break had time to quarantine prior to coming back to in-person instruction. The county report shows we're still in orange and very close to red, and the percent of positivity here is the highest in the state. We have experienced 163 COVID cases in the district and currently have what we would consider 25 active cases, however, all of which should be done quarantining prior to our anticipated January 19th in-person start. So we look at the data, and my fellow administrators look at the data each and every day. We understand as a leader that not everybody will agree with our decisions, but at the end of the day, we make the decisions that are in the best interest of the health, safety, and welfare of our students and staff. Our ultimate goal is to be in all day, 5 days a week. However, let us take you back to the RBS guidance where schools need to adhere to capacity and social distancing guidelines. Until that guidance changes, we cannot fulfill full time. So again, our decision was made based on the RBS parameters. While we may not agree with them all, it is our duty to follow. We invite any concerned parents to come forward with concerns or questions. Our staff would be glad to take you through our decision-making process. Sending anonymous letters and commenting on Facebook without factual information is time-consuming. As you can see, there is a lot of history here over the past few months, and we invite you to contact us with your name so that we can be sure to get back to you and be able to address all concerns as needed. Everyone is entitled to an opinion. However, our decisions have been based on state and national guidance, and we know we have done the best job we can in ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of all of our students and staff in Egg Harbor Township School District. Thank you, Mr. Castellano, and that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santilli. It just goes to show, the strength of this central office team. You didn't miss a beat with Dr. Gruccio being unfortunately delayed this evening. Excellent job. And, I'll just, reinforce that we want to hear from everyone. We want to hear your opinions. You can contact us by the phone number that's on the website and that we'll use for call-in. There's a contact us link on the web page as well. But we need to just know a name and address, so we know who you are, so we can get back to you. We know you live in town, and we'd be more than glad to do the best we can to respond to any question, any comment. We'd be happy to. And so that leads us now to our public comment. And so for public comment, we will be going to the phones, and again, we will ask for your name and address. We limit public comment to 3 minutes. We are not permitted to speak about personnel or litigation. And if the case is that you have a complex question, it may be that someone would need to get back to you afterward.
Okay, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address again.
Yes, it's Regina Bongiorno
Yeah.
at 405 Starfish Lane.
Go ahead with your public comment.
I have 5 questions. My first question is, if full-day pre-K is available starting on 2/1, will the students be returning to in-person for 5 days, all of the children? If not, why? My second question is, if the teacher, as per stated earlier, if a teacher is sick or off for whatever reason for virtual learning, why don't they have the subs and in for the students during virtual learning? Instead, they're left to self-study or busy work with YouTube videos. If they were in school, they would have a substitute. What are the plans to bring the kids up to speed when they do return to school due to the regression and struggle through virtual learning? A lot of students are going to be, behind. My fourth question is, since the last board meeting, we were informed that our district is now closed for in-person learning due to understaffed. What are we doing to assure that we're not going to run into this issue again? And then my fifth question is, if all children are not able to return to 5 full-day in-person learning by February 1st, will the board and the district be working to get the children with IEPs back in person, at least due to they are not learning through virtual learning? And my personal comment, it is very frustrating as a parent of EHT to hear constantly that we're doing the best that we can and working to ensure the safety of our students and our staff, when we're not really taking into account the stress, anxiety, and the decline in the educational growth that this is causing to many students with this public shutdown. If the private schools can do this with 1 building, why can't we do it with 11 buildings? There should be a way that our public schools can get back to opening full-time, 5 days a week for all students. We're just making excuses at this point with saying that it's because of the COVID cases and we're in orange. It's just, we're seeing schools around in district after district opening up at least to hybrid, and we're still here 100% virtual. And that's all I have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. How do we want to do this one, Steve?
I think, based off of the amount of questions, I think it would probably be best suited for us to provide a call back tomorrow. That way we can provide some more detail in regards to the 5 questions that the member of the public had asked. I can tell you that in terms of some of that information, really what it comes down to is that pre-K, the plan is for 2/1. I can answer that the plan is that we would be looking at 5 days a week to bring the students in. In addition to that, I know that the concern is why not all students, but there are varying levels of detail that go into all that decision making, which would probably be best suited to have a return call tomorrow.
So we will get back to you with all the detail we have, but what I do want to say is I just want to repeat something I said at the outset. We want everyone back for in-person learning as soon as we can, and we're not making excuses. We're doing the best we can in a worldwide pandemic. We really are. So we all want the same things.
Thank you, Mr. Castellano. We do have another caller.
But
Okay.
what I do want to say is,
if you can mute your television, you're going to be speaking now. Muting. Thank you. Okay, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Debbie Rockelman, 189 Alder Avenue, Egg Harbor Township.
Go ahead with
Good
your public
evening,
comment.
everyone.
Good evening.
Happy New Year. I have a couple of questions. I was reading through the Code of Ethics. Can someone explain to me number 3, where it says the board will to consult with those who will be affected by any policy and planning and so forth. Who are those people that are affected? I haven't seen much of that. What I have seen in the past has been the board, the committees decide something, work session comes up. Here's this new policy that nobody knows anything about, and so who was consulted? Who were the affected people? I don't see that this has happened. So please, if I'm wrong about this, I would like to understand it better. And I also want to mention something about number 6. Let's see. The way I see this is that everybody sitting on that board surrenders their independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups. This Board of Education is the most partisan I have ever seen. And it's all about stacking the board. And I'm just going over the years and have been watching what's been going on. And that is a frightening thing to me. The rules are, well, we want this guy, let's figure out how to get him on. We want her, let's figure out how to get her on. And that's just kind of how I see it. If I'm wrong about that, but I see horrible division, and I'd like to see that stop, because I don't know, why anybody thinks they're powerful. Sitting on a school board for the kids, you guys all state that it's for the kids. It's not about your own personal gain, but yet, and it states that, but yet, I don't see it that way. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I know all of you guys work very, very hard. I just personally would like to see more cooperation, more, new ideas. Every one of you sitting there, well, most of you think one way, and there's a few that think another way. And the only way, it's going to work correctly is if everybody tries to see the other's point of view and goes from there. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a question. Can I have another question, Chandra?
Your time is up. We want to let other callers
Okay.
call in, and maybe you can call back at
got
the
it.
end. Okay, sounds good.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
So I'm gonna, before I go to Mrs. Elko, just on clarifying on the code of ethics, so I don't think, Mrs. Rockman, that I quite agree with your characterization. I don't believe that partisan politics belongs in a boardroom. People are entitled to their views. Everyone is, but it just doesn't belong in the boardroom. And I think for the most part, it's not in here, and it doesn't belong here. And so I agree with you on that. And I'm going to ask Mrs. Elko to just address those couple of items on the code of ethics, if you would.
Absolutely, Mr. Castellano. So to answer Mrs. Rockelman's question on number 3, confining your action to policy making and framing policies and plans only after the board has consulted those who have been affected by them, that is because one of the things we've talked about is a Board of Education, your job and your ability is to create policy. One of the things you have to do, and for those of you that are on the policy committee are aware of this, when a new policy comes about, we talk to the director of food service, the director of special education, the assistant superintendent, director of transportation. We talk to those individuals that are affected by that policy to make sure that it is in line and consistent with what we're doing, what makes sense, and that it's something that they are able to do. So for example, a Board of Education might make a policy, but it might not be practical to follow through with as a district. It might be contrary to what we're doing as a district in a specific area. And that's why the Board of Education has to, prior to creating policies, consult with those individuals that are affected by the decisions that we make. So that is something that the policy committee has always done and continues to do. And if you have been on the policy committee, you've seen that firsthand when we invite those individuals into the committee meetings, or we get reports through the assistant superintendents as to their discussions with the individuals affected by those policies. And the surrendering the independent judgment, I believe Mr. Castellano has already touched upon that. As a board member, you do take the oath of office. You do agree not to surrender your independent judgment. And this board has all taken the oath of office to do that.
Thank you, Mrs. Elko. Ms. Sullivan?
Oh, sorry.
A comment about the policies. We get the whole board gets the policies before our work session so that we can work on them, so that we can have opinions or state any concerns we have. Does the public see that at the same time? Because I think that's what might be what Mrs. Rockelman is doing, things that pertain actually to the students or that will impact the public. Are they able to see that before the night of our regular meeting?
It's public the Friday before the regular meeting.
Okay, so the public is able to see it. So then I suggest to the public, please go into our agenda, click on the policies individually, read them. If you have any questions, get them in to either the administration or come up, call in or come up to a microphone when we're back in person.
I agree with that, Mrs. Sullivan, and also there's another requirement, a legal requirement, which we always follow. Any new policy requires 2 readings. So that means, in essence, it's visible to the public for an entire span of a month, from one business meeting to the next business meeting when it's finally adopted on second reading that second month. One reading is simply for minor amendments to an existing policy, but even those again would be visible during the course of the weekend. And keep in mind that in our case, because we have a work session model, it's discussed at a work session, then voted on at a regular meeting. So there's that window of time for discussion and for the public to be informed and aware, even on a minor amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Castellano. We do have another caller. I will say during the hold period, we did lose a Miss Denise. If she wants to call back, we are still taking public comment. I will now go to the first line. You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Yes, Brandon Donalfo, 20 Clover Hill Circle, Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey.
Go ahead with your public comment.
So this is my public comment. First and foremost, Mr. Castellano and Mr. Santilli, you seem to be referencing that people are not coming forward and letting you know who they are. I'm one of the people that clearly believe it should be in school. This is detrimental to, excuse me, this is detrimental to them. It's causing children a lot of grief, a lot of isolation, and it's clearly unhealthy because this is not the norm. My question, Mr. Santilli, for you is you seem to be pretty well versed, at least the way you're talking, in the science and what's happening. My question to you is very simply this. Why are we ignoring the experts? Why are we ignoring the data? And why are we ignoring the science, which says that this is really not affecting children? So when we say we're worried about the children and the staff, it's really not a worry about the children here. It's more of a worry about the staff, is it not? And can you please answer that question as to why we seem to be continuously ignoring the science and data as to how this is affecting children? Thank you. Or not, I should say.
I'm just going to disagree with the whole premise of that question, sir. We're not ignoring any of those things. What we were all making reference to earlier is health, safety, and welfare with regard to the COVID-19 virus, which is a worldwide pandemic. I think you'd acknowledge that that does exist. But at the same time, we are also very keenly aware of the need and the desire to have our students, as we have said multiple times, even this evening, back in person, first through a hybrid and back to full-time as soon as we possibly can without risking health and safety due to COVID. And I'll let Mr. Santilli amplify or add whatever he'd like.
Well, I agree, Mr. Castellano, and I will say that there are a lot of different avenues and a lot of different research that we follow. But one of the things that we follow closely is the New Jersey Department of Health, and the latest guidance that came out on December 22nd, prior to going on holiday break, really provided some updates and some more clarification. I think we've been very transparent, and I think that everybody understands that there have been lots of changes even within the guidance. And I'm not just talking about the road back to school guidance, but I'm also talking about guidance that comes right out of our county health office. And we work very closely with them. Really, this isn't about necessarily who it impacts more. It's about trying to make decisions in the best interest of the entire school community. Because just because it may not impact a particular student, a pre-K student, a fifth grade student, like it may somebody that is elderly or has other underlying symptoms, the other thing that we're being cognizant of in trying to stop the spread is a simple fact that those same students are going home to a household in which they could be carrying that virus and pass it on to other people. That's not doing our part in stopping the spread. And I think that we are really focused on trying to make sure that we do our part as an EHT community, to really combat this and hit it head on.
Thank you, Mr. Santilli. We do have another caller. Okay, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Elizabeth McBain, 115 Stillmanville Drive, Egg Harbor Township.
Go ahead with your public comment.
I'm sorry, they're still talking on the...
Yeah, you have to mute it. It'll confuse you. It's about 30 seconds behind.
Yes, hi. I'm just calling regarding the hybrid versus virtual school classes. I just kind of had some thoughts on it and a question at the end. When given the surveys back in August and September, we were given two options, virtual or hybrid, and those plans were put into place. And I feel like those who opted for virtual, they got what they signed up for, and that's wonderful. That's their choice. But for those of us who selected hybrid because that's what would be best for our children, have not gotten what we asked for. The dates got pushed back. November came, and I have to say the planning on that I feel is pretty poor, that Group A got 8 days and Group B got 4 days. Other school districts around us were able to plan for the month of November and at least get their students in their 1 day a week each week. So again, if the students are virtual, there really isn't as many issues because they're getting their 5 days a week. My suggestion and my question is, could we reevaluate with another survey like we did in August and September and see where we're at with student count for going virtual versus going live? Some people may be more concerned at this point and want their kids to go to virtual. That may open up more availability in the classroom for those of us who want to go live. I know with my kids in particular, they had some classes, they had 2 kids in the class, including themselves. So I don't understand why, if when we return to hybrid classes, why perhaps they couldn't go more frequently, because clearly the classrooms could hold, I believe it was up to about 12 students per class. So that would be my question. Would you consider putting out another survey with 2 options, basically all virtual or all live school, and perhaps the all virtual kids are taught by all virtual teachers?
and the live students would be taught by all live teachers until we can get them all back full time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll just open up and say that, in terms of, the hybrid, the students that opted for hybrid, obviously that was affected by circumstances that caused us, to have to return to virtual and for a time, as well as not be able to start immediately at the beginning of the year. But the road back document in our planning is a living document. So we're certainly always looking to improve it. So are we open to looking and trying to make it better for all students? Absolutely. It's a living document. We're always going to work on that. So, and in terms of a type of survey, I'm certainly open to that. I'm going to, leave that to our administration, but certainly the best means and methods that we can utilize to see what parents would prefer to do within the parameters that we have, we'd certainly like to do that.
Thank you. We do have another caller. You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Brian Cruz, 102 Kathy's Lane.
Go ahead with your public comment.
My question would be to you, Sandra. I have requested an incident report on an incident that happened back in September. I was told that it was being under investigation. The information would be provided to my wife and I when the investigation was concluded. The actual incident date, I believe, was back in the middle of September. And I still don't have the incident report after several requests. So let this statement act as a official complaint against the administration for dropping the ball and not timely getting that information.
Mr. Cruz, this is the school attorney. Mr. Cruz, this is the school attorney. I just want to caution you, anything you're saying at a public meeting, you are going to be held responsible for if it is negative, if it is something that could be considered libel or slanderous. The board is not going to endorse that comment. So I just want to be clear.
The cheapest contractor for the bus.
I just want to be clear that any comment you make.
The wrong address. Does anyone there have their children almost?
Mr. Castellano?
One at a time, please. Yes. What shall we do here?
I just want to again express to Mr. Cruz that any comment he makes in public at a meeting, he could be held libelous for, or there could be slander or defamation. So he needs to be careful what he says. In addition, this is a student matter and we are not able to discuss it at a public meeting. This is something that as the solicitor that I have been looking into, and he will have a response tomorrow.
Amy, it's been months and this is unacceptable. As I stated before, this is an official complaint towards the administration. So I expect the board to do something here.
Understood, and we will take care of that.
Thank you. We do have another caller. You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address. Denise, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Denise Haladin, 12 Hideaway Lane, Egg Harbor Township.
Go ahead with your public comment.
Yes, I had a question. My initial question was regarding a survey, but I think that Mrs. McBain already addressed that. But I also wondered, I noticed the emphasis on reaching out to ascertain how many students have been affected with the COVID-19 virus. And I wonder if this data, which is being collected, is going to figure into your decisions moving forward. If we
identify that a certain percentage of the population has been afflicted, and is now considered immune for the next 3 months minimum per the CDC guidelines, will that also factor into your decision to return to in-person learning and allow for maybe a larger percentage of the student population to return?
Okay, thank you.
I guess in reverse order, and I'll ask Steve to jump in with me. We are, this is something that I'm going to leave to our administration, but we are certainly open to any surveys that can help us do a better job, help us better understand what the needs are of the community, of our students, and how we can do better. In general terms, Denise, and I appreciate your call and your comments, we are looking at guidance from the Department of Education, from the state, and most importantly, with respect to the question that you're asking, the county Board of Health, which gives us specific guidance on quarantining and everything that goes with that, and who comes back, and all of the intricacies of the pandemic and its ramifications. So I don't know, Steve, if you'd like to amplify or.
Yeah. So behind the scenes, everybody knows we've been keeping data on the dashboard. Just to go into a little bit more detail, behind the scenes of the dashboard, we compile lots of other information, and we are continuously looking at that on a daily basis. One of the things that we really focus on, of course, is who is what we consider an active case, who would be under quarantine right now. That was some of the information that I shared in the superintendent's update. In addition to that, just to remind everyone, we are, tentatively still looking at an in-person hybrid return on January 19th. Are all of these things being considered? Absolutely. Everything from our case count, our current case count, to our numbers of students and staff who would be affected for that return upon quarantine. And in addition to that, there's been a lot of conversation, and rightfully so, about surveying. If everyone recalls, one of the things we did at the close to the end of Q1 was we did send a survey to parents, really just asking if they were interested in either pivoting to in-person instruction or going to full remote. That same process will be released very soon for the end of Q2 and prior to this anticipated return. And the whole idea behind that would be able to make sure that we have accurate numbers in regards to the students that are going to be in person versus fully virtual, because the executive order is still in effect in regards to parent choice for full virtual students. So all of those things are things that are currently continuously being improved upon and worked on to meet the needs of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Santilli. We do have another caller. Now, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address. Stephanie?
Yes.
Can you hear it? Yeah, you're now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Bethany Greco, 118 Leo Avenue in Carver Township. I was calling because it states that the pre-K is going to start February 1st. And it was said earlier that they're going to start in person 5 days a week. My kindergarten child has only had 4 in-person school days the entire year. So in 1 week, that pre-K child is going to already get more in-person learning than my child did, who's been there since September. They'll probably get more in-person learning than my daughter will get the entire year into next year if virtual learning continues. She has an IEP. She's not getting what she needs. Her report cards were all ones. She still isn't learning numbers and letters, and that's not any fault of the teachers. They're doing the best they can, and they want to go to school. It's supposed to be a balance, you keep saying, of health,
health, safety, and well-being. If teachers want to go, students want to go. I don't see what the difference is between a kindergarten going 5 days a week or even 3 days a week versus a pre-K are going. It doesn't sound like it's a balance of health and safety. It seems like you're more interested in money from the state for pre-K versus the rest of the kids getting their education because you're not getting money for that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we do have another caller after that.
Yeah, I want to respond that, and I want to see if Steve wants to amplify. So that's a goal at this point. I don't know what's, when we're talking about on February 1, we need to see and make sure we're hitting the targets on the 19th first. I mean, so February 1, it may not be possible for pre-K to be in person. We're going to have to follow the same guidelines as we do for all the other grades. So, I mean, someone please correct me if I'm wrong. That's a goal here, but we're not going to be, looking to give any favor to one over the other. We're not here for that. We're trying to help all students.
Castellano, I would agree with that sentiment. Right now, our hard target for January 19th is what we're focused on. I know there's been a lot of conversation because of the pre-K grant, and rightfully so, in regards to February 1st and that transition. Just to remind everybody, prior to even closure, we did have different phases. We had our phase 1, our phase 2, and phase 3. And part of phase 1 was really focusing on our self-contained classes as well as our preschool classes. They were coming in 5 days a week, and there was rationale behind that and planning that went into that, as well as then phase 2 followed by 3. Our return on the 19th is similar to that particular plan, and that's what we're anticipating for. But it's also something to keep in mind. It's not about the pre-K expansion grant and money or any of those types of decisions. They don't come into play. What comes into play is following guidance from the Department of Health, from the Road Back Plan, and we have to keep in mind that our pre-K class sizes are held to a certain number, which is a more manageable number to bring in a full class. Whereas kindergarten, first grade, second grade, as we go on, those numbers are larger, and we cannot socially distance and bring in students or the full class on a 5-day rotation at this current time under the current guidance and executive order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Santilli, as well as the fact that as we go to the upper grades, 7 through 12, now we have changing classes, which adds another level of complexity to the distancing requirements. So we'll go to our next.
Thank you, Mr. Castellano. Let's go. All right, you are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Susan Fisher Brown, 316 Island Lane, EHT.
Go ahead with your public comment.
Hi. First of all, I want to say Happy New Year to everybody and thank you for your hard work. My concern is kind of a twofold thing. Number one, I am a nurse practitioner at Shore Medical Center, so I can appreciate the magnitude of this pandemic. I've been working during the pandemic since it started, and I understand what it involves, and I've watched many people suffer with this disease, so I don't want to shortchange the significance of COVID-19 by any means, especially when it comes to children. Nevertheless, I have 3 of my teenagers in school. 2 of them are at EHT. 1 is a senior, 1 is a freshman. I'm watching my children dwindle in drive and really feeling a necessity to do schoolwork. They don't feel there's any process involved because there's not the norm that they're used to. So I'm very much in favor of going back 5 days a week. I've communicated with other parents and other school systems. Their children are going 5 days a week, and there's no concern with the children having any increased abilities to contract COVID-19 than there would be kids in school. As a matter of fact, I would have to submit that most probably there's an increased risk because these kids are out amongst each other with no masks on, wherein the school system would certainly follow the protocols and procedures where the kids and teachers would be safe by wearing some masks. So I appreciate that you're trying, and I also want to say that I cannot appreciate what you're doing to get this back in the system. So I don't want to assume to know your jobs, as you don't know mine as well. My concern and my question to you tonight is the teen center. I know that there was a cutback and there was no the kids weren't afforded that process and that outlet. The kids need a forum. A lot of kids are struggling. There's a lot of depression, a lot of concern for just not being motivated. And I just want to see if there's a possibility that the teen center or some process that could be implemented that these kids could have some kind of an outlet aside the parents. And I talk to my kids, so I'm not a parent that wants other people to raise my children. Certainly, I am extraordinarily involved up front in my children's lives. So I don't want you to think that I want someone else to help my kids. But there is some kind of an appreciation that the teen center affords that others do not, and including parents for these children. So I just wanted to see if there was a way that, I don't know if that's something that you all are going to start up again once it's an in-person process goes forward. However, I'm interested in your feedback and plan therein ahead as we go forward to getting more normal again. Thank you for taking my question and to the board meeting tonight. I appreciate you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We share your sentiment of wanting to get, as we've said tonight, of wanting to get back to normal, to get back in person as soon as we possibly can. So we share your sentiment. We hear you. And in terms of the teen center specifically, I'm going to defer to Mr. Santilli.
So in regards to the teen center, first and foremost, we still have access to that teen center. Ultimately, what it comes down to, obviously, as we are in this virtual environment, all of our resources are also virtual. But as we transition back, and if that becomes a reality on the 19th, the teen center will still be, a valued and needed resource for our students. In addition, as a school community, we continue to push out resources, not just listed on our website as a static page, but also through pushing out through social media. We've continued to, push out also our Pursuing Public Health videos, anything we can do during this time to try to provide support to the community. So we certainly would suggest utilizing those resources as well. But first and foremost, I think it comes down to the simple fact that if there's anybody out there that needs assistance for their children, please do not hesitate to reach out to a school administrator, a building administrator, a guidance counselor. We're here, and we are certainly ready and willing to make sure we reach back out and provide the services that are needed.
Thank you, Mr. Santilli. I do have another caller.
Did you have something?
Hold on one second. Repeat that. I'm sorry. Were you ready?
Okay.
You ready? Okay. Okay, you are now live streaming. Please mute your television and state your name and address.
Liz Parla Butcher, 327 Sea Pine Drive.
Go ahead with your public comment.
Thank you, Chandra. Happy New Year to everybody. I am just calling in. I think I asked this question in December, and I don't know if it's going to be at the next board meeting, and if so, my apologies. But when will the public be made aware of your plans or the district plans to assess and address learning loss? And when will we be made aware of any hybrid plans in the long term? And specifically, when I think about the primary levels, I respectfully disagree with a few members on the board in terms of in-person learning being a lot more essential for our primary grade levels. And I can speak to just diverse learners in different grade levels in my own home, from 7th grade down to 1st grade. And I think the primary kids especially really need the in-person. I'm thinking about after school and summers, and I'm just wondering what the district's plans are once again to, to assess and address the learning loss for this summer.
Thank you.
We appreciate that, Liz. We know where you're coming from. I guess, before I defer to Mr. Santilli, I just, want to inject that we can talk, when we talk about assess, sometimes we want to go right to our standardized assessments, and we tend to forget that our teachers are our best assessors, and they assess our students every single day. That's what they do. I mean, we know the best learning takes place when assessment is done at different times in different ways. There's classwork, there's homework, there's quizzes, there's tests, there's papers.
Evening,
So
I can return to public comment.
our teachers are on the front line of the assessment process, and I'll just see if Steve has anything to add in to that. But we thank you, Liz.
Yes, one of the things that we've continued to do is we haven't lost, even though these aren't normal times, we haven't lost the capacity, and we certainly haven't lost the fidelity in regards to how we capture data. We still are following our normal assessment protocols, even though we're not in normal times. Those are the things that we haven't let go of. They certainly are valued. We need to have that measurable and meaningful data. So, for instance, recently, we just put out a new memo in regards to the process, for instance, for our staff to support Cycle 2 assessment data. All of that information will certainly help us take a look at that learning loss. In addition to that, we will be having a presentation up and coming this month, and it's really going to be from our Director of Special Education, who is going to help guide that conversation in regards to plans for this summer and ESY, in addition to also how his department is starting to focus on learning loss and so on. So those conversations are also taking place, and it's certainly not something that we've lost track of.
Thank you, Mr. Santilli. Go ahead with the next caller.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, you are now live streaming. Name and address, please.
My name is Justin Hill, 405 Stillmanville Road.
Go ahead with your public comment.
All right, so my comment is I have a child that's in self-contained, and I want to know what's going on with getting them back to school, because children in self-contained and IEPs, from what I understand, is like a legal document, and nothing is being covered under their IEP, because essentially I'm the teacher and I have my own learning disabilities. So I want to know what's going on. If my kids are going back to school, or what's the deal? Not only my kid, but other kids in self-contained and kids with IEPs.
Thank you.
Okay, so certainly we're aware of this issue, and I'm going to see if either Mrs. Elko or Mr. Santilli want to chime in with a response here.
Mr. Santilli, do you want me to go first?
Feel free.
Okay. I understand that the administration, as well as the Director of Special Education, is looking at all of the data and the information to make sure that they come up with a concrete plan to allow for special education students to return to education in person in the district. As soon as we have more information, we will let you know. At this point, that date is January 19th. If anything changes, of course, the special education parents in our community will be notified. The IEP is a legal document, and we are following the document. We are in a pandemic, and based on that fact, we are following the IEP to the extent, in a good faith effort, to the greatest extent we can. And we are following those documents. If you have individual questions, it's my understanding that case managers have reached out to parents. Please contact your case manager if you have a question or a concern about the IEP, about the way your child is receiving an education. If you need assistance, if you need help, please contact your case manager. If you're not getting a response, please contact the supervisor of special education. It's my understanding that Mr. Dorso has communicated with the parents in Egg Harbor Township and provided contact information for those individuals. In addition, you can always reach out to Mr. Dorso as well as the Director of Special Education. Mr. Santilli, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add?
No, I think you covered it all, Ms. Elko. Thank you very much.
Okay, for the next caller, Mr. Castellano? Yes? Okay. You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Debbie Off, 27 Stony Creek Drive. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to thank the teachers, and I understand this is new and hard on them. I have many close friends that are teachers in and out of the EHT district, and I have 100% gratitude and respect for all of them. With that being said, we're always talking about data. Along with Mr. Fauci, data shows there is no chances of getting COVID in school for the kids. Our classes are smaller, we have PPE in place, and our community is doing their part. Can the BOE do a survey with the teachers to see how many are open to live in-person teaching, followed by showing us the results on the EHT website for the taxpayers? Most all students need live in-person for labs, for supervision, to decrease the risk of child abuse, depression, and suicide. I hear both sides of the stories all the time regarding opening EHT. Open, close, safe, not safe. We need your selfish. We need the schools to open for the children. For those that choose to stay virtual, then by all means, stay virtual. But please stop playing off fears and keeping our schools closed. We believe in the administration, the BOE, and the teachers can find a way to be productive, safe, and efficient. I am a mom. I am a voice. I am a taxpayer. I am advocating for those children who want and need in-person education. No more waiting, no more dodging questions, no more pointing fingers. Let's work together and open EHT schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We share your goals, and we hear you. You know, I think we've spoken quite at length about where we are this evening. We want to see schools open in person as soon as possible, within the parameters of the guidelines that we need to follow, and keeping in mind that we're in a global pandemic. We're not trying to create fear or anything like that. We're dealing with a situation that's real, and we're following guidelines that are concrete from the state and the county, and we're doing our best. But we hear you, and we understand your concern, and we want the same things that you do.
Okay, I have another public comment. You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
My name is Kevin Devlin, 100 2nd Avenue, Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. I'm calling to ask if you referenced about 6 or 7 people ago about the survey that was conducted. Were those results ever published for us to view? My second question is, my son goes to school at St. Joe's, which is a private school. And my question is, they have just under 500 students at their school, and they've been in class Monday through Friday since September, and they haven't had any issues. I'm certain that their staff care about the students too, and they're working on a shoestring budget. So I'm wondering how they're capable of keeping their school open, but we can't keep ours open. Finally, I don't really see much changing from last April until now. I believe this is just going to keep going on and and then they're going to get back to school. So I honestly don't see anything changing with the school situation for my daughter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'm going to ask Mr. Santilli about the survey. I don't think when you compare a St. Joe's, a private, a smaller school, smaller classes, it's apples and oranges to what we have here in the township. We understand why people do ask that question a lot, and we get it. But it's a different set of circumstances that we're under here. We have more students per square foot. And there's much more to it. And so I'm going to go to, but we understand why people would ask that question. So I'm going to ask Steve about this survey. And I see a hand up then next, Mrs. Bird.
So the survey, if you're referencing the survey in regards to, there were a number of surveys. One of the first surveys that went out was to initiate at the onset of the school year, parents that chose to keep their kids full virtual versus in-person hybrid. There was an additional survey that went out later in the year based on policy, and it's really what it refers to is that prior to the close of Q1, we had a transition period where parents could make have an opportunity to pivot either or to in-person or remote. I know that the results weren't necessarily posted online or on the website, but I know that at some point they were shared in a superintendent's update. If not once, numerous times, I recall that information being shared in regards to different percentages of students that have chosen to be in person versus full remote. The same holds true for our next steps now in regards to what we have documented in Infinite Campus. We haven't lost sight of our student groupings. So for instance, teachers have the ability to see what group a particular student falls into. We didn't make that data disappear. So in turn, communication that will be forthcoming will really just point to the fact that we're transitioning back based off of our previous results. And should there be a change or a request for a change, then of course the parent would have the opportunity to do so, in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Go ahead. Mrs. Bird has her electronic hand raised.
Learning. Thank you. Based on the last caller, with a private school being open full time, how does a school have a classroom full of students? How are they not following the social distance guidelines that we're following? So even if they have a smaller overall population as Egg Harbor Township does, they still have students in it. It's still a classroom. So if they have 25 kids in a classroom, how are they getting around the social distancing and the capacity guidelines? Is it because they're a private school, or is it because we have to follow something different? What is it? Because I do agree with some of the callers that we do have other schools in 5 days a week. And yes, we are large here. However, do other schools, do they not have to follow the same things we have to follow? I'm just trying to understand how a classroom can be full-time with all the students in it, but we have to social distance and have a capacity limit. So maybe I missed something, but what's the difference?
I have some information pertaining to that. I have seen Atlantic Christian School and their setup, and due to the small amount of students, they've actually been able to put partitions on every single desk. So they're wearing their masks when they're moving around. They have partitions everywhere, even in the cafeteria. So I can't speak for St. Joe's, but I know that's what Atlantic Christian is doing, and that is why they can be full-time 5 days a week.
Is it the partitions that allow it? Is it having the partitions? Is that what makes it possible to have it?
That's what I've been
Is that what I mean from the Department of Education standpoint, like having those, is that what is keeping us? That's my question. Because if other schools are doing it and it's possible, we should be doing it too. And I understand we are in a pandemic, and I understand that we have done the best we can do. But we, in 3 weeks or 2 weeks, when we're set to go back into hybrid, we cannot let our kids down again and have a tragedy happen. I'm worried about our kids' mental health, just like these callers. We all are. You know, I'm worried some kid is going to commit suicide because they've been ostracized. I am so worried, and we all are worried about this. But like, I don't understand, and I don't understand how our private schools, even though they're smaller, are open capacity wise. Like, how are they allowed to have the kids? What is the reason? Just if someone could tell me what that reason is, because if it is because they don't have to follow the same rules because they don't get state funding or federal funding, okay, then that makes sense. But I just need to understand more clearly as to why one school is able to operate with 25 kids in a classroom with masks on and other schools aren't. So I'm missing something. So I'm just trying to understand it better. So I would appreciate a clarification on what the actual rules are.
Okay, so maybe I think that's for when we get to board comments, we'll have a board level discussion and seek some clarification there. But let's get to the rest of our public first. Is that acceptable?
Yes, I apologize.
I only have one caller on the line, Mr. Castellano, and it's actually a parent who would like to answer Mrs. Bird. I'm not sure if that's appropriate. I'll take your lead on that.
She can make a comment.
Okay. Okay, you are now live streaming. Go ahead with your public comment. Well, name and address first. I'm sorry.
Okay, Liz Butcher, 327 Sea Pine Drive. Christy, thank you so much for that question. With respect to St. Joe's and other private schools, as Ms. Sullivan was alluding to with Atlantic Christian at St. Joe's, I only know because my kids have a lot of friends at St. Joe's. They spent a boatload of money on PPE at the beginning of the year, and they were able to provide every child at every single desk in that classroom of 24 students plexiglass. So basically, the student is sitting in almost like their own little bubble at their desk. And when we talk about, like Pete mentioned, comparing, or whoever mentioned, I apologize, apples to oranges, when we look at the scope and the size and the magnitude of the Egg Harbor Township School District versus, St. Joe's, there's different funding issues going on. They do have to follow the same rules and guidelines with respect to all of the school districts in the state. I can only say this because I gave a webinar this summer on the Restart and Recovery Plan, and we went over the safety plans extensively. If you're able to provide that plexiglass within the classroom and go that extra step with that PPE expense, then you can have that social distancing of 6 foot or more isn't applicable if you have the mask as well as the plexiglass at each student's desk. Hope that helps clarify some of it.
Thank you. I don't have any other callers at this time. Mr. Castellano, if we want to put the sign back up. At this time, the message has been posted for a full minute, so we can close public comment.
Okay, well, we thank all the public for commenting. You know, we're really trying our best to listen to everyone's concerns, everyone's questions, do the best we can to answer them, and ultimately do the best, you know, that we can for the district. So we'll go ahead around to board member questions now at this point. Those were very good public comments, and that's certainly something that's going to continue, and it should continue. The information needs to continually be moving in both directions. I would like to know more about the efficacy of the shields. Is it the shields? Is it the density? Is it the number of students in a classroom? I'd like to know more about that as well. Does the shield go with the student when they get up to sharpen a pencil or go to a restroom or get on a bus? I don't know. I'd like to learn more about it as well. We're, you know, again, our road back is a living document. Whatever we can do to do better, to make it better, I'm interested in doing. I think we all are. Okay, so board member questions. So Mrs. Gilbert Floyd and then Mrs. Sullivan.
I guess the more so of a statement and then one question kind of tied in. All the calls tonight were from mostly parents who are beyond concerned about their children. And the things that really stuck out to me that I heard in some of the messages, and if I missed something, I'm sorry, but I heard, you know, social, emotional well-being of the children. I heard that loud and clear. I heard student achievement, and I heard the delivery of instruction is a concern, whether it's hybrid, whether it's virtual. And I also heard that parents are concerned about, and I know our teachers they are going above and beyond and doing the best, you know, putting their best foot forward too. But I think some parents are concerned about their children's, the delivery of instruction, you know, whether or not their children are excelling or regressing. And I hear concerns definitely about school opening, and also anticipating, like words like anticipating and if are mentioned that, you know, far as January 19th. And I think many people are on edge concerned about if we're going to be able to open. And this is not a question to the administration, but it's a comment or concern to say that, and I know they've probably thought about this already, but just people want to know, like, if they want to know sooner than later, if for any reason we may not be able to open. I think that's a big question mark and concern from many parents that called in. I heard special education students. I heard that cry loudly in the survey. And it's funny, we're just talking about public and private. And I hear a lot of people say, well, the public schools and the private schools. And that's where I was going to ask Ms. Elko if there is any, you know, I know that Ms. Butcher called back in and gave some information that she had to share. I have some information that, you know, that I have that, you know, as far as with the spacing and the PPE and different things. There's a lot of guidelines. There's a lot of, I always say, you know, when things like this happen, people do their own research and kind of bring information to the table. But just what the law says about that with the public and private schools versus what they're responsible for. But the main thing is that I just know that I feel like Mr. Castellano said it over and over again. And I know people are probably tired of hearing it, that we're trying our best, but I know that I know the district is trying their best. And sometimes they say, well, your best isn't good enough. It's not that it's not good enough. It's just not going to meet everyone's needs. And this is not a normal school year. So just take those, I just say to the public, I know I can't speak for every board member, but I know we all heard you. I know Mr. Castellano did speak, you know, he spoke a lot and he had a lot to share and did a great job, but we all heard you. And I think that's really what I wanted to say, or just to let the public know we heard you. And We heard you.
Thank you. Mrs. Sullivan?
Some of the things that we addressed as far as the smaller schools, a few of the board members, we went and visited our schools when we opened the lower grades, and we saw the innovative things that the teachers were doing to make barriers between students. Shower curtains. One did use plexiglass. The plexiglass she and her husband made themselves. They were wonderful, but they spent about $100 a person or per desk. And we did bring it up at a finance committee meeting what it would be to do that. Now that means minimum of 7,500 partitions that are going to be put up. And in the high school, that would be more because students are using multiple desks, multiple classrooms. So to compare us to a small private school, it's wonderful that they're able to operate 5 days a week. But for 7,500 or 7,400 children, it's an astronomical cost. I know, Chandra, I'm going to ask you what we have already put out in PPE. It's an enormous amount of money that we have already used. And to have partitions at every single desk is, for a district as big as us, is just, it's just not doable. So as everybody else has said, we want our kids back to school, but we've got to follow the state guidelines and do what they recommend.
Thank you. I see Mrs. Salagi next.
Yes, we got an email talking about how many preschool classrooms we were going to have and 15 students in those classrooms. But nothing was mentioned about the kindergarten. We were supposed to have all-day kindergarten this year. We don't have it really. And how many students do we anticipate being in the kindergarten classes? We used to have like about 18, and from what Mr. Santilli alluded to a little while ago, there's going to be more, and that concerns me. That we're going to have preschool 5 days a week, but we can't have all-day kindergarten because of the size of the classrooms. What is planned to be the size of those classrooms? No answer?
The current class size right now is anywhere from 15 to 20 students.
That's the next. Right now, 15 to 22.
I said no, 18 to 20. I mean, I don't have numbers.
Okay.
However, I would say that if I was giving a good estimate, it would be anywhere from 18 to 20 students per.
But the spaces that we are using for those preschool classrooms, is that going to make that number higher?
No, I would not. I wouldn't anticipate that. If I understand the question. No, I don't think so in terms of space and square footage.
The kindergarten class sizes were not impacted by the preschool expansion, is what I think she was asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
okay.
They were not impacted, and ultimately, I was in, especially back in September, I was very hands-on in working with building administration and taking a look at the kindergarten classrooms, because that was a concern of ours. That here we are trying to initiate full-day kindergarten in year one, and then we're in the throes of a pandemic and can't successfully do that. Of course, that pained us just as much as anybody else. But we probably, based on the size of the classroom, safely in terms of distancing, we could possibly get 14 students in there, which wouldn't allow for an entire class to go 5 days a week if, in fact, all students were participating in person. So those are the things, those are the challenges that we're faced with. So it is a very complex puzzle, as you can imagine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see Mrs. Gilbert Floyd and then Mrs. Bird.
It's that electronic hand again. It's tricking me. I didn't mean to leave my hand up. I'm lowering it now.
Okay.
Mrs.
So-
Bird.
Thank you. First, I wanted to apologize because I lost my composure a little bit earlier ago because I'm feeling it, a little pressure from all of this, and I'm worried about my own kids as well as everyone else's kids. So I apologize to my fellow board members and the public because I kind of lost my composure a little. So I'm hopeful that when we get to the 19th, we're able to open, and we're able to open successfully so that we can meet our students' needs in a more traditional way. But that being said, if we do have to remain closed, I'm hopeful we consider maybe not closing the whole district, but closing classrooms or closing a building and not the whole district. If that's not possible, maybe we can reevaluate getting our IEP children in, or our youngest children in, the children who cannot manipulate the computers the same way as the older kids. I know I have older kids myself, and they are struggling too. So they're struggling too, but I also teach little ones, and I see how difficult it is for them as well. So I'm hopeful we can come up with a plan that doesn't impact 7,400 kids all at one time. Maybe we could phase in and not continue to be closed. But I do want to circle back to these dividers. I know that we discussed the dividers over the summer. We discussed the dividers during the fall. I don't recall discussing it at a board level. I believe curriculum discussed it. It sounds like now finance discussed it. We have to be careful that we're not looking at the cost of these dividers as it's not cost effective. We just put a new turf and football field in. And the amount of remediation we're going to have to do for these students coming back, we're going to have to pay a lot of money. So if it takes us purchasing these dividers to get our kids back in 5 days a week, we need to find some money. And it doesn't necessarily have to be 7,400 dividers, because we don't fill 7,400 seats every day. Sometimes those kids are in the cafeteria. Sometimes the kids are in gym class. They're spread out. So, or we do at least half, and we get the kids in half of the week, and then the other kids come in the other half of the week. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If we have money to do things like turf and customized track and fields, then I think that we should be able to find the money somehow to get our kids back in school, because we are going to be paying for this for many, 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 many years. And it's going to outweigh the cost of these dividers. And if that is what the difference was for getting our kids back in, then I'm hopeful, if this pandemic does not improve and we do have to wait until there's mass vaccinations, I'm hopeful maybe that we can get, at least for the younger kids who might have a harder time keeping these masks on, at least get them in for them. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so yes, and I would like our administration to investigate the efficacy, of the dividers. Is that the factor with the other schools that we're talking about with the privates, or is it other things? There's a couple of hands, but I do want Mrs. Hauk to address I guess the question that came up a little bit earlier for her regarding the rules that privates and publics are under, correct? And then we'll go to the rest of the hands.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. Just in looking at the roadback documents, if you remember when all schools were originally shut down in the executive order, private and parochial schools were included in that. However, when you start to look at the roadback plan and what the requirements are, it talks about public schools, charter schools, Renaissance schools, and private approved special education schools. It does not talk about parochial schools. So I think that answers the question earlier about what is required. I know Dr. Gruccio has said when the district is required to submit plans to the county office, that is simply the public and charter schools in our county. That is not the private parochial schools in our county to get those plans approved. So I hope that provides some clarity on that question. The second thing I wanted to briefly address is, yes, I think it's important to get the information about dividers, but the road back is very clear that their guidance is that it really should be 6 feet apart to the greatest extent practicable. And I think that's really a question, and it's a question that I think a lot of people have been discussing. You know, you can get dividers. Students would not be 6 feet apart. And the recommendation is to be 6 feet apart. And it's in all of the documents and guidance. That's why I have the signage. That's why they have the lines in the hallways. Those of you that work in schools, I'm sure you're used to seeing that, the spacers, all of those items. So yes, that could be something that we could certainly look at and consider, but it's not just simply dividers. I think it's a lot of other pieces together that together, I think with all that information will help everybody make some informed decisions. I hope that helps.
Yes, very much so. I want to try to get it in the right order. Mr. Price, and then Miss Alabarda, and then I'll see what others we have after that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. I had to try to unmute there for a minute, and I'll remember to lower my hand as well, so you don't have to come back to me. I just wanted to comment that this was a very interesting meeting. The public comment on the calls that came in. I think there were a lot of great calls and questions tonight, and we need to continue to follow up and hopefully have additional answers coming very soon, because there was a lot of discussion, and this is healthy that we're having a dialogue here, and hopefully we'll have good news before the 19th to report, and the conversation should continue. Communication is key, and no one person has all the answers. So this is what we need. We need to continue the good communication, and I appreciate listening to all the calls coming in tonight, and I kept notes, and I myself, I'm going to certainly follow up on a lot of the suggestions and the comments that came in tonight. So I'm not going to hold it. I know the hour is late, but everybody have a great New Year, and we'll see you on the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Miss Alabarda is next.
Thank you. I don't want to repeat anything that other people have been saying, but I am very concerned about our students' social and emotional well-being. I have a question and a few questions. First of all, if our preschool can have up to 15 students and we're able to get them in 5 days a week, isn't it more important to try to get the kindergartners in, or is it part of the grant that we have to have those kids in 5 days a week immediately? Like, I don't understand. I know we want to get all the kids in 5 days a week, but are we looking at the preschool being hybrid also, with some days at home and some days in school? And then my other concern is a lot of students have been having problems with internet, and I know they've been getting marked absent. I've heard it all around. And what are we doing for these students? I know they have hotspots, but when the weather's bad, they're not always going to work. So are these kids going to be getting held back because they're absent too many days, or are we going to be working with them, making sure that if they're completing work, they're able to do well? And then my other concern and thought is, we need to find a way to facilitate more learning and to catch these kids up. Is some kind of volunteer summer program feasible? If the case numbers are down, obviously.
that sounds like the agenda for the next curriculum meeting, doesn't it? But I'm going to see if admin has some things you want to share, or are we going to take those as IOUs and get on them? But great points.
There's a couple of things that I think we can address, and all good questions. I think first and foremost, it's not necessarily about the grant, and what we talked about earlier was really class size. I think that once we get back in, and again, it comes back to what we can do when we hit January 19th. I mean, we are anticipating, of course, that return. 2 weeks from then, we'll be hitting that February 1st mark. We were able to successfully implement preschool based on our preschool disabilities classes and our preschool inclusion 5 days a week previously, and that was our intent moving forward. And a lot of it does have to do with the state mandate of exactly class size and being able to meet their needs. You're talking about smaller children in a smaller setting and class size and square footage. We can accommodate that. When you start climbing the ranks, the bigger the students, the more square footage they take up. Hence, you can't get as many in a room. So those are all things that come into consideration for that. In terms of, and I think the other question you talked about was really the learning loss, and I think addressing that again. Those are all things we're having conversations about right now. And there is a small committee that's been formed in regards to the learning loss and what we can do to stay ahead of it and plan for the future. You'll hear a little bit about that from our Director of Special Education when he presents to the public and to the board. And then you're also going to continue to hear about that. That is not something that will go away. And in addition to that, there are other opportunities that we're exploring that are out there right now to address those needs.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Mr. Ireland next, Mrs. Floggy, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pivot and kind of go on different questions. So NJSIAA recently came out with some guidance on starting their sports, indoor winter sports, on January 11th start time. Are we waiting until the 19th for them to be able to practice, or can we go forward like other schools and start practicing January 11th? So that's one of my questions. And then the second question is, where are we on getting the required equipment for our hybrid meetings, for the school board meetings? For a couple meetings, we've talked about if we have to go back to hybrid school board meetings, we would have to have special IT equipment and special phone software and et cetera. So I was just wondering where we are on that, if we started doing that, because it doesn't look like we're going to go fully back. It looks like we'll most likely go hybrid. And then on a positive note, I would like to say thank you to all the staff and students that participated in the Winter Showcase musicals that were happening during all the nights before the holidays. And then there's one coming up at the end with all the students. My family, we loved watching that every night at 7 o'clock. And then we still watch some of them on YouTube. So thank you very much. And hopefully we can answer some of my questions. Thank you.
So in regards to NJSIAA, I can tell you that we've been in the throes of in-depth conversation about the potential to start on January 11th. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's boys and girls basketball that has the potential to start. But ultimately, I would probably say that within the next 24 hours, a final decision will be made if we would actually allow for the start for January 11th, or if we would hold until schools and the campuses actually reopen fully on the 19th. But like I said, probably within the next 24 hours, we'll have a formal response.
Before I go to Ms. Sloggy, Chandra, I think we're set to go with our hybrid board meetings. I know this gets confusing because there's hybrid learning and then there's hybrid board meetings. But our last one, when we were in at Alder, we were able to do hybrid insofar as we could have the some board members be remote and accept, have live streaming and questions coming in. I think we are almost there. Am I correct on that? We're getting close.
Yes, we have identified a product. Our first hybrid, if it's the 19th or when it would be, we'll be experimenting. We won't know until we try it. We can only practice so much internally, but we did get pricing and it was reasonable. So IT did a great job looking into that for us. So. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Mrs. Salagi's next.
That's good to hear about the different kinds of meetings that we can have. Chandra, so far, how much of the CARES Act have we received? I mean, have we spent all that we've received? And
we just received additional funding. We'll be talking about it at the next board meeting, the additional funding and how we're using the funds. We have already spent it in theory because I've been using my general budget to fund all of the supplies and PPE we've been buying. All the other grants we already discussed went towards digital divide, it went towards tuition, went towards other purposes. So this new money that just came through will go towards actually cleaning equipment, supplies, and PPE, which still won't cover about $200,000. There's still that much left in our general budget we've been using. So we'll be presenting something next meeting.
Do we get reimbursed 75% or 100%?
For the Relief Act, it's all 100% offset. The FEMA funding, which is a much higher hurdle, you can't use it for staff, you can only use for students. And with all the other funding coming through, we'll see how that trickles out at the end, but that's going to be a percentage of a percentage. It's not fully funded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me see. Circling back, Mrs. Bird, is your electronic hand up, or is that just you just left it there? Huh. Okay.
Glad to know it's not just me, Mr. Castellano.
That's all right. I feel good as long as it's not just for me, as long as it's not just a one electronic finger up pointed at me. I feel good. I feel like I'm doing all right. Do we have anything else from board members? This has been a very good meeting. Certainly not the typical reorganization meeting by any stretch. Well, and it couldn't be because the times don't allow it. I mean, this had to be a full-on discussion about important things. A lot of excellent comments coming in from public, questions, as well as from board members. We didn't fully answer all of them, and those that we didn't, we want to work on getting answers and, working towards, again, making our road back as a living document, improving wherever we can improve. And of course, our goal, as we've said all night, is to get back to normal and to get back in person as soon as we can. So are there any more board member comments? Is there anything else from administration? I think that was a fantastic meeting. I appreciate all of the public comment. I appreciate board member question and comment. Congratulations to our new and returning board members, all three who were sworn in tonight. Congratulations to Ms. Gilbert Floyd, our vice president, who has her electronic hand up, by the way. It's a little humor there. You gotta try to keep it light. And
I'll put it down. I'm sorry. Thank you.
And thank you to our administration. Dr. Heary is here. Always appreciate him. In case anyone doesn't know, he is the dean of the Egg Harbor Township School District, without question. Thank you to Mr. Santilli, just without skipping a beat, just jumping right in there in Dr. Gruccio's stead for this evening. Thank you, Ms. Elko, always for your wise counsel for us. Dr. Charlton is here. Ms. Anaya, thank you. Mrs. Shoemaker, we always thank you for being with us. And I'm going to see if there's anything further from administration. And if not, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All right, everyone, raise your electronic hands. And by voice vote, we are adjourned. Thank you all.